Which performance do you think is better? It's the same form performed by different people. I'm assuming all of you would choose this form. But if I were to ask you why, you might say maybe it's experience, the ability to jump, full extension of movement. We can go down the list, but why is it that even without knowing the actual reason, we're pretty confident that this person here is better than the other person here? What this means is that we need to figure out what specifically makes one form better than the other. Most instructors will probably tell you, well, you gotta add more speed, add more strength. What's missing to me is performance quality. Well, wait a minute, this isn't gymnastics. This isn't dance. This is martial arts. True, but say what you want. If you, as an individual, are doing a form, regardless whether this is for competition or if you're showing off to a bunch of people, you are, in fact, performing. And there are good performances and bad performances. And the number one thing that impacts performance quality, regardless of martial arts style, is intent. Let's start with the intent of martial arts that separates it from dance or gymnastics. The intent of martial arts usually is to attack or defend. So when someone says you're just going through the moves, it usually means that you lack intent. And the question that I would ask you about your form is, what are you doing with your moves? Let's start with the punch. If we were to just go through the move, a punch is just sticking your arm out. Now, punching with just your arm is very different from a punch that fully extends out and utilizes your hips and your feet. Movement in martial arts should in some way support an attack or defense. That is how intent comes together in a form. Now, some would say, I do put intent in my move. I'm trying really hard. Showing effort doesn't always mean that you're applying the right force. To fully perform the move, you have to actually know where to place the effort. That's why the advice of adding power or adding speed is not sufficient. You have to know where to place the right amount of effort and the right amount of tension in your body to fully express your moves. So how do we go about developing this intent? This piece might seem obvious, but I have to bring it up because there are folks out there who only focus on forms and never really made that connection of what martial arts moves are actually about. That is, learning how to fight with these moves. That is the intent anyways, how you should punch, how you should kick, and how you should stand. Now, a kick where you just lift up your leg is very different from a kick where you are trying to drill a hole through your opponent. You have to actually engage your hips, engage your feet, and engage your core in order to execute a full kick. This doesn't require you to be a fighter, but knowing how a punch or a kick feels on another person, all of that just comes together in the most fundamental ways of martial arts. So those are the moves that actually make sense in a fight. There are moves out there that, how shall I say without offending other people, shouldn't be used in a fight, no matter how cool they look. I'm not talking about the fancy kicks. There's a time and place for that. But something like this move, or even a wushu sword. But it looks so cool, and it's still part of our form. How do we practice that? Here's what I mean. There's some moves like this, where you extend your hand out and you ball it up into a fist. Bruce Lee does it, and it looks really cool when he does it. He is showing intent. Then you try to do it, and then you record yourself, and you look like a dork. Why is that? It goes back to this question. What are you doing with your moves? Well, I am charging. Charging what? If your brain and your body can't make that connection of what you are actually charging, something is just going to look off. Now, some would interpret this move as if you were grabbing someone by the shirt and lifting them up. Well, that makes sense. It takes a lot of effort to lift someone up. You're engaging your forearms the right way. But if you're like me, you probably never had to lift someone up with their shirt. You make a connection with the move that you are familiar with. I don't know the feeling of lifting someone by the shirt, but I can see the fingers and the forearms articulating itself from the pinky to the thumb. That to me is like pulling on a rope. Now that affects how I stand and that affects the placement of my hand. It's not necessarily an intent to attack or defend, but it is something very similar. But wait, didn't we just lose martial intent by going down this path? Well, yes, it is a substitution for our bodies to make a connection with a movement that we are not necessarily familiar with. And most of us don't fight. It's hard for us to really make that connection. And you know what? That's okay. You can still express intent even though your goal is not always to attack or defend.